Hello, students. So this morning, I attended a planning meeting by a group of student leaders, and one observation I made was that as students, quite a lot of you do not have the experience to actually conduct and chair a meeting to plan for an event. So after observing the session, I thought I would like to put it on record, some guidelines to help you to learn and how to plan just a very simple activity or an event, right? So how can we go about making sure that getting your friends, your fellow students together to sit down and plan something, and that the time spent is productive and useful. So here are some tips I have for you, right? So suppose there are four students, right? A, B, C, D, right? So let's call them Adam, Betty, Colin, Diana, right? So let's say they come together to plan for a simple event for their juniors because they are student leaders, right? So in this group, maybe Adam is designated as the leader of the group. So what should happen first when they decided, okay, it's time to start the meeting? What should happen is that Adam needs to define the goals and objective of the event. Start with that, right? Tell people we are planning this event because of this. Now, by clarifying the purpose and the expected outcome of the event, the whole group can then use this to guide the planning process, right? It is not just copy and pasting ideas from previous activities or what, but every new event, let's re-clarify what is the purpose. I think this will help a lot, right? So that's the first thing we do in the first few minutes. After that, right, very important, confirm the agenda. One mistake that a lot of students may make was to start to brainstorm ideas, throwing in things that they think will be fun and interesting, and then the entire meeting get derailed. So start with the agenda, right? Decide on the time, the place, then after that go down into break it down into the various activity. So for example, right, they need to look at the activities and the time allocated for each activity. So it could be something like this, right? After discussing a little bit, the group decided that they need to have 3 activities for the event. So after looking at the objectives of each of these activity and how they support the overall goals and objective of the entire event, they say that okay, 15 minutes for activity 1, 10 minutes for activity 2, and 15 minutes for activity 3. Then maybe they need 5 minutes introduction, 5 minutes of conclusion. So total 50 minutes. Something very simple like that, right? So that then I'll write it down. Okay. Everybody can look at it, all right, on the same piece of paper. Write it down on the whiteboard or something. Now, the next step is to assign roles and responsibilities. So as the leader of the group, Adam could say that okay, I'll take charge of the introduction and the conclusion, right? Then after that, they will look at it and say, okay, Betty, right? Betty will take charge of activity 1, Colin will take charge of activity 2, Diana will take charge of activity 3. Then we can just go one round. Is there any objection? Do you want to do a swap or anything like that? So if there's no objection, then settle this, right? So each member of the group actually have a certain activity that they are in charge of. So once they have this sorted out, then it is time to discuss each of the item and activity and brainstorm ideas on how to do it better than previous years or something like that, right? So this is the part. Now, take note, please. This is important. This step of brainstorming and discussing the items should not take place until the above steps are completed, right? You need to make sure that the agenda is confirmed so that you can compare with the previous year's agenda. It could be different, right? Or the previous activity, it could be different. Whether the objectives are still the same or has they changed, right? Then you also need to confirm the personnel to be in charge. Without settling on the personnel who will take on the roles and responsibility, this brainstorming can go quite well, because if you're giving ideas for other people to do versus ideas that you can do, some people can go a bit overboard, right? So this is important. It is a common rookie mistake made by inexperienced leader to actually begin this step too early. This is an important step, but it should not happen too early. So once all the steps are done, you start to discuss this. Everybody gets to give their ideas, okay, encourage participation and collaboration here. This is where it takes place. Now, as people give ideas, there's bound to be situation where there are conflict of ideas, right? So, for example, you have a situation where, okay, Colin suggests that activity one they should do this. Diana suggests that no, activity one you should do that. Then they couldn't agree. So what happened? Very simple. Okay, Adam will just look at the document. Activity one, who's the in charge? The in charge is Betty. So after they discuss, they lay out their case, the pros and cons, turn to Betty. Now Betty, you heard them, make a decision. This is where Betty have the opportunity to demonstrate her leadership qualities and her responsibility, empower them, right? So similarly, if we are discussing about activity 2, then Colin will need to make the decision. If we are talking about activity 3, Diana will make the decision. That is what taking responsibility means. Okay, this is how we should do this, right? So finally, with all the key plans in place, then, okay, you create an action plan, set timeline, right? We need to set timeline so that things do not get derailed, and along the way, maybe Colin could fall sick and need some help. That's where we can react accordingly, right? So set some lines so that we can check in on everyone. After the timeline is set, right, Adam as the group leader should check in with each of the activity IC and to check that everyone's on task. So once all the things are on task, all the documents that you need, all the logistics that you need are all planned for and ready, then since it's a student project and student planning you're talking about, invite your teachers to vet your work, right? So once everything's in place, get the teachers, look at what you have done. Now, teachers, after looking through, will give you the input from a more experienced person's point of view, right? So we'll give you some ideas on how to improve. And after that, you amend your plans, right? So once all the amendments are done, and we are good to go, right? And then we can execute the plan. And that is the process on how to plan and conduct and plan a simple planning meeting. I'm talking about the meeting itself, not the event, right? So let's have a very productive meeting and meaningful meeting. If you follow these steps properly, I'm sure you will enjoy this process of learning and creating very wonderful experience for the groups that you're in, especially if you are a student leader of some form of a certain group. All right? Okay, so with that, I wish you have a nice day.